Here's why Western hero Gabby Hayes was so unlike the roles he played. George Gabby Hayes was a famous character actor in movies during the 1930s and 1940s and later on television. He made his name in Western movies playing the sidekick to stars like Hopalong Cassidy, Roy Rogers and Gene Autry. He became extremely popular and featured consistently in lists of the 10 favorite actors in polls taken of movie-goers of the period. He was born George Francis Hayes on May 7, 1885 in Wellsville, New York. In his youth he worked as a circus performer and semi-professional baseball player before moving to perform in vaudeville and burlesque with his wife, Olive Ireland, whom he married in 1914. The pair became extremely successful on the vaudeville circuit and he was able to retire in his 40s, but he then lost a lot of his money in the stock market crash of 1929 and was forced back to work. He moved to California at the suggestion of his wife and began to get regular work in the movie industry. When he became a regular fixture in the series westerns of the 1930s, it was at first as a bad guy, in films such as Riders of Destiny in 1933 and West of the Divide in 1934, often starring opposite the young John Wayne. From 1936 he appeared regularly as Hopalong Cassidy's sidekick Wendy Halliday. Trail Dust in 1936 is a typical example. By then he was already past 50, and the whiskery, garrulous, old-timer roles suited him well. At the end of the 1930s he left the Cassidy team after a financial dispute and began appearing regularly with Roy Rogers, with the new name of Gabby as he was not allowed to use the old name Wendy. He appears in The Arizona Kid in 1939, Young Bill Hickok in 1940, and dozens of others. He occasionally made an appearance with Gene Autry, such as Melody Ranch in 1940, and with other Western stars such as John Wayne. Towards the end of his career he played, as always, the grizzled old-timer in some Randolph Scott vehicles, including Trail Street in 1947 and his swan song, The Caribou Trail in 1950. From then until 1954 he had his own TV Western series, The Gabby Hayes Show, aimed largely at children, after which he hung up his spurs. Off-screen he was a serious, well-dressed, and sophisticated man, the polar opposite of his film persona, whose preferred utterances were Dern Tootin' and Young Whippersnapper. He remained married to Olive until her death in 1956. Despite his prolific screen appearances as a cowboy, Hayes didn't learn to ride a horse until he was past the age of 40. He even professed that he had never been a big fan of the Western genre. Gabby Hayes passed away of cardiovascular disease in Burbank, California, on February 9, 1969. He was 83 years old. Awarded 2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for radio at 6427 Hollywood Boulevard, and for television at 1724 Vine Street. Homage was paid to Hayes in a different way in the 1974 satirical western Blazing Saddles. The actor and director Jack Starrett, credited as Claude Ennis Starrett Jr., played a Hayes-like character. In keeping with a running joke in the movie, the character is called Gabby Johnson. After Johnson delivers a rousing, though partially unintelligible speech to the townspeople, David Huddleston's character stands up to say, "Now, who can argue with that?" and proclaims it authentic frontier gibberish. In the animated film Toy Story 2, the character Stinky Pete the Prospector, voiced by Kelsey Grammer, is modeled after Hayes. In the film's fictional universe, he is a toy version of a character on the marionette television Western Woody's Roundup, where he is a colorful comic relief character. In contrast, the toy is intelligent and well-spoken, a reference to Hayes' contrasting real-life and film personas. In a Mighty Carson Art Players sketch on The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson impersonated Gabby Hayes in a sketch with Roy Rogers. This sketch has appeared on Carson's syndicated series Carson's Comedy Classics, which features highlights from his years as The Tonight Show host. Hayes was mentioned in The Simpsons episode Radioactive Man, in which Milhouse becomes Radioactive Mon's sidekick, Fallout Boy. The director of the film comments that Milhouse is going to be big, Gabby Hayes big. Every year in early July, from 1983 through 1989, Gabby Hayes Days were celebrated in Wellsville, New York. The event featured a street sale, square dancing, and Hayes look-alike contests for adults and children. This celebration was eventually merged into the mid-July Wellsville Balloon Rally and gradually disappeared. A street is also named after him in Wellsville, Gabby Hayes Lane. Since April 1969, a band of fishermen has traveled to Kettle Creek, Potter County, Pennsylvania, for the Gabby Hayes Memorial Trout Fishing Tournament. These men, known as Gabby Guys, gather annually to celebrate the opening day of the trout fishing season and the memory of Hayes. In April 2019, they celebrated their 50-year anniversary, which also marked 50 years since Hayes' passing. Rest in peace Gabby Hayes, goodbye legend.